Pacific Manufacturing Factory had been on a break. Larry was anxious. They finally got orders and began work again but were soon met with trouble. Tia, how did you offend Walter of Purity Pharmaceuticals? How about you go and ask him for forgiveness? We're the ones at a loss if this continues. Tia was upset. Ask for forgiveness. I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I ask for forgiveness? Thought Tia. Alright, you go back to work first. Okay. Larry left. Tia sat on her office chair and lowered her head in very low spirits. She was helpless in this situation. The company was in trouble, but there was nothing she could do to turn the situation around. She decided to seek the help of the mysterious Mr. Caden. I'll ask him for help just this once. I won't look for him again after this one time, Tia thought to herself. There was a knock on the door just when she had made up her mind and was about to leave. She sat down again and said, "Come in." Ads by Pub Future. Larry pushed open the door and said frantically, Tia, Walter from Purity Pharmaceuticals is here to see you. Huh? Tia exclaimed in shock. Suddenly, several burly bodyguards walked in carrying a stretcher. There was a man covered in bandages lying on the stretcher. This man was Walter. He was in such a state after being beaten by Dawson. Dawson's heart was in pain after the Purity Pharmaceuticals factory was razed last night. He was furious that such a massive factory filled with many pieces of equipment was destroyed so easily. He lost over $1 billion and took out his anger on Walter. Tia was stunned to see Walter's appearance. Tia, I am here to apologize. Walter's whole face was bruised, and he even had a few teeth knocked out. Thus, he spoke very unclearly with air leaking through his teeth. He took out a check. This is the $30 million in arrears, plus the interest of $300 million in total. Please accept it and forgive me. I won't ever dare to make the same mistake again. Please forgive me. Tia was dumbfounded and froze in place after hearing his apology. It took a few seconds for her to react. Mr. Kaffenberger, what's the matter with you? Tia, please forgive me, Walter pleaded again. He, too, was unaware of what was going on. He was still puzzled to this day. How could a live-in son-in-law have so much influence? He raised a massive factory effortlessly just because he wanted to. In the end, the police arrived but were threatened by a few words from Dawson. Tia wore a shocked expression. What is happening right now? He was so arrogant yesterday and even sent people to cause trouble at the factory. Today, he personally showed up in bandages all over him to pay back the $30 million arrears and even gave an additional over $200 million in interest. How did I get back this money so easily? Tia recollected herself and said, I only need back the $30 million. You can take back the rest. Walter panicked hearing her words and hurriedly said, Tia, you must accept the interest. I'm dead if you don't accept it. Dawson threatened to throw him into the river to be fed to the fish if Tia did forgive him. Tia frowned as she thought of someone. Could it be that mysterious Mr. Caden helping me again? How did he find out about the Pacific Group's problem? She could not help asking, was Mr. Caden involved? Yes. Wait, no. Walter nodded his head, then frantically shook it. Dawson warned him not to tell anybody about it. Otherwise, he would be buried alive. Tia, please accept the money and treat it as compensation for Pacific Group's losses. Alright. Tia thought about it and eventually accepted it. Purity Pharmaceuticals was not short on money, and she desperately needed it. Since Walter had personally sent it over to her, he would be troubled if she did not accept it. She accepted the check for $300 million. The small check weighed like 1,000 pounds in her hand. I'm indebted to you again, Mr. Caden, Tia sighed in her heart. Walter sighed in relief after Tia accepted the money. Dawson would have beaten him to death when he returned if Tia did not accept it. Tia, thank you for your forgiveness. I'll take my leave now. Walter did not want to stay any longer. Larry glanced at Walter in shock as the latter was carried away by the bodyguards. He finally came back to his senses after Walter left. Tia. Tia waved her hand and said, okay, everything's settled. You head out first. I'll put the money into the company's account and use it as our expansion funds. Alright. Larry left in confusion. What is going on? Walter sent people to cause trouble yesterday and came to apologize with $300 million today. When did money become so worthless to him? Thea sat down. She thought about whether she should visit Majestic Corporation and thank Mr. Caden in person. Larry walked back inside the office while she was deep in thought. Ads by Pub Future. Ems. Thea, turn on Kensington's City of Medicine news channel right now. Hearing this, Thea turned on her computer and went to the City of Medicine news channel. Good morning to all viewers of our channel. We've got the latest news about the City of Medicine in Kensington. Today, I am going to share with you the breaking news about Purity Pharmaceuticals. What we are looking at right now is Purity Pharmaceuticals factory. The factory has been razed and completely destroyed. According to some witnesses, there were 300 excavators and thousands of people gathered here last night. It seems that the Purity Group had offended someone, which caused the destruction of their factory. However, just this morning, the Purity Group refuted the rumor and announced that the factory was taken down due to old age and was going to be rebuilt. As of now, we are still uncertain of the specifics of the matter. Thea was stunned to hear the incident being reported and to see the factory completely destroyed. Her mind went blank, and she was unable to react for a while. After some time, she took a deep breath. Isn't this too much of a fuss over such a small problem? We only had a small conflict, and there was no need to completely raze Purity Pharmaceuticals factory to the ground. Thea felt that the mysterious Mr. Caden had gone overboard over such a small matter. It was no wonder Walter was injured all over and behaved so terrified. It turned out that a lot had happened last night. What's going on, Ems? Thea, who is helping the Pacific Group? Larry was not stupid and could tell that this was not a simple matter of rebuilding an old factory. It was obvious their factory was demolished by force. Additionally, he saw that Walter was hurt all over when apologizing, so he guessed a lot of what had happened. That's enough. It's nothing you should worry about. You should go back to work and finish the work at hand, Thea collected herself and said while waving Larry off. Larry glanced at Thea. It was at this moment that he deeply realized how terrifying was this woman from the Callahans. Understood. He nodded and turned to leave. Thea sat in the office absent-mindedly. Her thoughts wandered to the mysterious Mr. Caden again. As for James, he got up early in the morning and left, saying he was leaving to search for a job. The Callahans did not bother complaining about him anymore and simply felt it would be a waste of their time. James headed out and went straight to the Transgenerational Group. He planned to ask Scarlett to arrange for a nominal job title in the Transgenerational Group to satisfy Thea and not embarrass her. He arrived at Transgenerational Tower and saw a woman. The tall, beautiful woman radiated a domineering boss vibe with her long red dress. Quincy. James frowned. What is she doing here? Didn't she apply for the vice president position of Majestic Corporation just yesterday? Quincy did apply for a job at Majestic Corporation. However, the primary purpose was to meet the chairman of the Majestic Corporation to confirm whether he was her boyfriend 10 years ago. However, she did not manage to see the chairman. Today was her first day at work, and the first thing she did was see the chairman. Unfortunately, she still did not get to see the chairman. Since she could not see him, she no longer wanted to stay in Majestic Corporation. Although Majestic Corporation was a huge corporation and ranked very high in Kensington, it was much inferior compared to the Transgenerational Group. The Transgenerational Group had a promising future and development. She was not going to stay in Majestic Corporation just for some personal affairs. She had already waited 10 years and did not care if it took longer since it would be just a matter of time before they met. The two approached each other upon spotting the other party. Quincy was amused to see James dressed in casual clothes, and she crossed her arms. What a coincidence, James. I see you almost everywhere. Don't you know where you are standing right now? What are you doing here? Didn't you apply to Majestic Corporation? Why are you here now? James said with a smile. Going to Majestic Corporation is a waste of my talent. After thinking about it, I think I'll have a better career at the Transgenerational Group in the future, Quincy said arrogantly and proudly. James squinted and said, You're very confident in getting the job, aren't you? Of course. Quincy was not humble and simply replied, I was able to get the job as vice president in Majestic Corporation with a monthly salary of $3 million. At the very least, I'll be a department manager in the transgenerational group. I'm confident that I'll become the vice president in 3 years. Are you also here to apply for a job? She scanned James up and down while speaking. Ads by Pub Future. James nodded and replied, yeah. Thea said I'll embarrass her if I don't have a job. I thought about it and wanted to see if I could get a job as a security guard or driver for the transgenerational group. It won't be embarrassing if I have a job there, right? Quincy nodded. True. You'll probably barely qualify for a job as a security guard with your military qualifications. However, a security guard job will only earn you $10,000. You'll never be able to do anything big in life. James smiled and gestured for Quincy to enter. You're first. Quincy took out her large sunglasses and put them on. Then, she turned around and walked into Transgenerational Tower. James walked in after her. He directly took the elevator and headed to the top floor. The top floor was the chairman's office. It was a luxurious and extravagant office of more than 1,000 square meters. James sat on a comfortable chair and glanced at Scarlett standing in front of him. Did someone by the name Quincy come to apply for a job today? He asked indifferently. Yes, her qualifications are good, and she was the vice president of a large corporation abroad. They are having an interview with her right now and going through some questions, said Scarlett. Put on the live interview for me now. Okay. Scarlett immediately made the preparations. Soon, one side of the office wall lit up, showing the live footage of Quincy's job application interview. The interviewers were talents that Scarlett had scouted from abroad. They were professionals, and the questions asked were extremely tricky. However, Quincy had rich experiences and calmly answered the questions. She analyzed them critically and had a unique understanding of each problem. The interviewers wore satisfied expressions on their faces. James watched the whole interview process. Although he did not understand business, he could tell that Quincy was not bad. Her answers were very neat and structured. Scarlett, is there a candidate for the company's vice president? We've quickly recruited people and have almost filled most departments. However, the vice president's position has always been vacant. Although many applicants had years of experience, the position is very important. HR has been filtering the candidates but hasn't found anyone suitable yet, Scarlett replied. Scarlett was a grave robber and not someone proficient in business. Fortunately, she had money to use. Money made the world go round. During this period, she scouted and recruited countless business elite from large foreign companies, which stabilized the corporation. What do you think of her? James pointed at Quincy on the screen and asked. Scarlett did not understand what James meant. Quincy was indeed charismatic in terms of appearance. In terms of skills, it was hard to determine with just a few questions. She's not bad, Scarlett replied tentatively. James tapped the table with his fingers, thought for a moment, and said, let her try out the vice president position for a few months and see if it works out. Keep her if it works out and get someone else if it doesn't. Although James did not know the business, he had a good judgment of people as the Black Dragon. Even though Quincy looked down on him, she was very confident. Plus, she was very passionate and aggressive at work. Interview room. A middle-aged man received a call. Yes, all right. He hung up the phone and glanced at Quincy sitting across from him. He stood up with a smile and said, congratulations, Ms. Zyler. The chairman is very satisfied with you. We'll give you a 3-month trial period for the role of vice president. I hope you perform well and don't disappoint the chairman's expectations of you. Quincy was surprised. She specified that she was only applying as a department manager in her resume. Why were they suddenly offering her the position as vice president now? The transgenerational group's vice president was not comparable to Majestic Corporation. Majestic Corporation's assets in total would be about tens of billions. In comparison, the transgenerational group had assets worth trillions. This was not their market value but the real assets they possessed. Although it was the same position, the worth of it was different. Chairman's office. After resolving Quincy's application, James glanced at Scarlett and said, we've temporarily solved the position of the vice president, so now could you help me arrange a job? I need a nominal job title in transgenerational group. What? Scarlett was taken aback. Nominal job title. Ads by PubFuture. The owner of Kensington's Transgenerational Group wanted a nominal job title in his own company. What are you trying to do, James? Scarlett recollected herself and inquired. James thought about it for a while and said, "It'll be best if it's a position that sounds very capable and influential. One that can scare those outside the profession but not insiders. Most importantly, it shouldn't be a job where I must come to the company daily. I'm not that free." Scarlett was lost in her thoughts. Does such a job exist? Then, a thought flashed in her mind, and she said, "I know. James, how about an account executive?" What's it responsible for? Asked James. It's the kind where you need to negotiate outside with clients. You won't have to come to report to the company every day. It's also an executive position, which is quite a high position if you tell others. However, those within the field know that you are an ordinary salesperson. Every company's salesperson would claim to be an account executive when negotiating business outside to sound higher in position. Then an account executive it is. James laughed. It was not too shabby. An account executive at the Transgenerational Group was quite an admirable position. The position was enough to scare plenty of people. "James, I'll go through the onboarding procedures immediately and pass your name tag." "What do you mean by that?" James was a little puzzled. Scarlett explained, "It's like this, James. The Transgenerational Group is going to be transformed into a world-class organization. Thus, an identity tag is a representation of being employed under the Transgenerational Group. It's similar to a person's identity card. It's unique and encrypted by the latest electronic encryption system. It's something that cannot be replicated or faked." "Oh, okay. Go ahead then." James realized that Scarlett had done a lot during this period. The identity tag sounded very high-end. Scarlett left. Soon, James' onboarding procedures were completed, and he obtained his identity tag. The identity tag was the same size as an identity card, and the format was a little similar to a business card with the employee's name and position. Scarlett handed it over and said, "James, this is your identity tag." James took it and observed it. It was heavy. The front of the identity had the words Transgenerational Group and a special logo on it. The logo was very simple. It was an illusory figure stepping across the moon. This logo representing the Transgenerational Group seemed to have been carefully designed. The employee's name and position were on the other side. Name, James Caden. Position, account executive. "It's pretty good," James praised with a satisfied expression. James. Scarlett hesitated. "Yeah, why you hesitating? Just tell me if you've something to say," James looked at her and asked. Scarlett took out a few more identity tags and handed them to James. I prepared these for you. You can see whichever suits you. You can hold on to it in case you need it in the future." Scarlett understood that James kept a low profile and did not want to reveal his identity. However, they were in a generation where one's capabilities mattered. No matter where one would get looked down upon with capabilities. Therefore, Scarlett prepared a lot of identity tags for James. James casually picked up a few and looked at them. Name, James. Position, Chairman of the Transgenerational Group. Name, James. Position, Head of Security Department. Name, James. Position, General Manager of the Transgenerational Group. James found it funny after seeing all the identity tags. "What's the point of all of these, Scarlett? Do you expect me to use all these to show off?" James, It's alright. I know you had good intentions. This account executive identity tag is enough. You can put away the rest." "Alright." Scarlett nodded and put away the identity tag. James did not stay in the Transgenerational Group for long and decided to leave soon. Ads by PubFuture. Outside Transgenerational Tower. He stood outside and could not help but be astonished by the countless professional people dressed neatly walking in and out of the building. He never imagined that he would embark on the road of business one day. He touched his nose and muttered, "Life show is unpredictable. What are you being so sentimental about?" A voice sounded. James raised his head. Quincy had appeared in front of him while he was not paying attention. "What happened? You couldn't find a job and have hit a wall?" Quincy crossed her arms and glanced at James. "Of course not. James smiled as he took out his identity tag and shook it in front of Quincy. Do you see it? I'm an executive, James said proudly. Quincy saw it very clearly. Account executive. She knew that most salespersons in large organizations have their positions written as account executives on business cards. Thus, it was the same for the transgenerational group. Although it was a simple salesman position, Quincy was still slightly surprised. James had returned after retiring from the military and had no business skills. How was it possible for him to successfully get a job as a salesman at Transgenerational Group? The Transgenerational Group had extremely high requirements for their salesmen. They wanted talents that graduated from prominent universities and had rich working experience. James had neither of these. What about you? Did you get the job? James glanced at Quincy and asked with a smile. Quincy was a very smart, gentle, and ambitious girl in his memories. He had not seen her for 10 years, and Quincy had changed a lot. She still had strong ambitions but was no longer gentle at all. Instead, she was domineering and cold. This was what James thought of her now. Quincy did not want to bother saying anything to James. Was it necessary for her to show off to a live-in son-in-law that she got the job as the vice president of the Transgenerational Group and would start work tomorrow? There was no pride in showing off to him. She simply put on her sunglasses, turned around, and left. James looked at her walking away, and smiled. She's pretty cold. Whoa, it's Kian, my Kian. At this moment, a sudden commotion happened outside the Transgenerational Group. Many girls rushed toward a car. The door opened, and a handsome man dressed in a white suit with silver hair got out of the car. The girls screamed as he got out of the car, and many people in the distance took out their phones to snap pictures. Who is this? He sure stirred up quite a scene. James frowned. Quincy, who was leaving, caught sight of the handsome man getting out of the car, and her eyes suddenly lit up. Her arrogant attitude was gone as she trotted over to catch a glimpse of the handsome man. Kian, I'm a fan of yours. I love the lyrics you wrote. Could you please sign on your song? Tomorrow will be Better's music sheet for me. She screamed. What a fangirl. James smiled after seeing the scene. He thought that Quincy was cold and proud. He never expected to have a complete change in attitude when seeing a celebrity. Kian Campbell. He first made his debut through a model show. With his talented singing and movie appearances, he quickly became the most famous celebrity in the county. The price of starring him in a movie was 100 million, and he only accepted the leading roles. Kian glanced at the enthusiastic girls surrounding him, and a bright smile appeared on his face. Then, he reached out to give high fives to the fans. All right, this is not a fan meeting. Kian is very busy, and if you want to take a picture, you can go leave a message on his Twitter, and one lucky winner will be picked to take a picture with him. Kian's manager stepped forward. Several bodyguards surrounded Kian and protected him as he left into the Transgenerational Tower under the enthusiastic screams of the people around him. James approached Quincy and said with a smile, I never expected you to be a fangirl that chased after celebrities. What do you know? Quincy glanced at James and raised his head. I'm not chasing after a celebrity. I just love his songs. They express the words in my heart through his song. You are the vice president of the Transgenerational Group. This guy must be here to join the entertainment company under the group. It'll be easy for you to take a photo with him. Quincy rolled her eyes at James. Work is work. It's taboo to use work for personal gain. I stay true to my professional ethics. That's enough. I'm not going to continue this nonsense with you. I've made an appointment with Thea to celebrate my appointment as the vice president of Transgenerational Group. Quincy put on her large sunglasses again and turned to leave as James watched her. James glanced at Quincy, who was leaving with a satisfied look on her face. Although she was prideful, she was still a pretty good person. Ads by Pub Future. At least her refusing to use work for personal gains as it was a taboo made James deeply admire her. Maybe I should get an album autograph too. James turned around and glanced at the Transgenerational Tower. He had never heard of the celebrity called Kian Campbell. However, he had seen that Thea's phone wallpaper was this fair-skinned and feminine man, Kian. The songs that she often listened to also seemed to be his songs. It was evident that Thea was also a fan of Kian. Thea would surely be happy if he could get a signed album for her. James returned to the transgenerational tower after the thought popped up in his mind. Top floor, chairman's office. James turned on the surveillance footage. He watched the surveillance of one of the reception rooms. In the reception room, Kian sat on the sofa with dissatisfaction on his face. He said, "This group of fans are disgusting. That chubby girl was almost about to pounce on me. I was so disgusted." He expressed his dissatisfaction on his face while speaking of it. It was as if he was going to vomit. James sat in the office chair and watched Kian in the reception room. It seems he's another one of those celebrities that pretends to be nice to fans on the surface but secretly hates them, he muttered. Kian took out a tissue and wiped his hands. After wiping his hand, he threw the tissue onto the floor. James took his actions to heart. He squinted his eyes as he watched it happen. There was a trash can right next to him, but instead, he threw it directly on the floor. Is this the manners of a public figure? Initially, he intended to help get a signature for Thea, but it seems that it was not necessary anymore. He took out his phone and called Scarlett. "Scarlett, come to the office." Soon, Scarlett showed up. "Is something the matter, James?" James pointed to Kian on the wall, playing through the surveillance footage, and asked, "What's with this person?" Scarlett shook her head. She was also unaware of why he was here. "I'll call and ask, James." She immediately went to inquire about the situation. Soon, she learned the person's identity. "James, this man is called Kian. He is a popular celebrity right now. The transgenerational group has established transgenerational entertainment and Kian is here to sign a contract with us today." "That's it." James thought about it for a while and said, "All right, there's nothing else. You can go back to work." Since he was an artist earning money for his company, James did not bother too much about him. "James, you probably don't know about all the businesses under the transgenerational group. I'll explain and show them to you today." "Okay, let's hear about it." James was intrigued. Scarlett said, "The transgenerational group is involved in various industries including food, fashion, housing, transportation, entertainment." Scarlett explained patiently. James dozed off. He yawned and waved his hands. "That's enough. You are in charge of it." James did not want to get involved in the matters of the transgenerational group. He checked the time and found that it was almost noon. Seeing that it was almost noon, James got up and left. He took a personal elevator and headed downstairs. At the same time, Kian had completed signing the contract and was headed down in another elevator. The contract was signed very smoothly. However, Kian wore a dissatisfied expression. Ads by Pub Future. "Helen, what's the matter with you? I'm the most popular celebrity right now. It should have cost more than $1 billion to sign me, yet we signed a contract for only $100 million. That's so much less than my value, right?" Helen was Kian's manager. Helen said with a smile, "Kian, the transgenerational group is a huge organization. They can't be compared to other entertainment companies. Although the contract fee is slightly lower, they have a lot of resources and will definitely be able to package you as a global celebrity in the future. When the time comes, you'll earn heaps by participating in countless entertainment shows and movies." "You're very thoughtful, Helen." "Kian, we have two tasks today. One is to sign the contract with the transgenerational group, and the other is to create gossip to rouse sympathy." "All right, I'm reassured with you helping me," Kian said and nodded. Helen said to several bodyguards, "Wait to see if there is anyone alone getting out of the elevators. I need you to call the media and use whoever is alone to create some public discussion." "Understood, Ems." Helen. Several bodyguards nodded. Very soon, the elevator came to a stop on the ground floor. Kian and his team did not rush to leave. Instead, they took their time to leave. A few moments later, James arrived on the first floor. He saw Kian's team before him but did not want to get a signature anymore. Thus, he planned to walk around them. When James was a few meters away from them, Kian's bodyguards immediately acted. Two surrounded Kian, and another two attacked James. James did not expect the two bodyguards to suddenly attack him when he got close. He had hundreds of battles in the southern plains. It was impossible for the two bodyguards to get close to him. He clenched his fists and fought back. The two bodyguards were immediately beaten to the ground. "What are you doing?" The other two bodyguards stared at James vigilantly. James was also confused. What did I do? I didn't do anything. I was minding my own business and was suddenly attacked. Security. Security. There's an attack. Someone is attacking. Helen suddenly shouted. Her loud shouts attracted the Transgenerational Tower's security guards. Immediately, more than 30 security guards rushed to them with electric batons. The security guards saw that it was a famous celebrity, and two of his guards were on the ground, screaming in pain. Thus, they surrounded James in an instant and were cautious of him. Don't move, the security warned him. James did not act recklessly since he was in his own company. He simply raised his hands and said helplessly, I am not moving. Can I know what's happening, security? Kian pretended to be horrified. He raised his hand and patted his chest. That was so close, Kian said as if still frightened by the situation. He glanced at James and the bodyguards that climbed up from the ground. Brat, what are you trying to do? Why did you try to ambush me? Do you know who I am? Do you know what the crime is for trying to attack me? Your life is over. You are going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Helen immediately took out her phone and called some reporters. They had already planned it out in advance. They would create some public discussion to win the sympathy of the public. Ambush. James was puzzled. He walked out normally from the elevator, so why was he suddenly being accused of an ambush? Stop accusing me of something I didn't do. Who ambushed you? Why would I ambush you? James' face darkened, and dissatisfaction appeared on his face. Kian's manager, Helen, approached him and swung her hand at James' face. James raised his hand and blocked his hand. How dare you fight back? Helen immediately shouted, do you know what you've just done? Do you know who you attacked? This man is a famous celebrity, Kian Campbell. What are you trying to do? Do you want to spend the rest of your life in prison? Many reporters were awaiting outside the Transgenerational Tower. Among them were also some reporters that Helen had arranged. Many reporters would arrive in just a few minutes with a phone call from her. The commotion at the elevator had attracted the attention of onlookers. Many people watched from a distance and discussed the scene. What happened? It seems that man dressed in ordinary clothes ambushed Kian. Does he have a death wish? How dare ambush a public figure? That guy's life is over. Many people felt sympathetic toward James. Why would he ambush a celebrity and waste his life in prison instead of living honestly? Ads by Pub Future. The reporters surrounded them. Kian, tell us what happened. Kian pointed at James, who was surrounded by security guards, and said to the reporters, I walked out of the elevator, and this person suddenly showed up. Then, he attacked my bodyguards, and I almost got hit. Did you get hurt, Kian? Are you alright, Kian? I'm alright. Kian shook his head and replied to their questions. Afterward, Kian glanced at Helen and said, forget it, Helen. I didn't get hurt anyway. Just let him go. Kian showed generosity in front of the media. However, the reporters were not satisfied with his decision. How could you let him go? He'll commit murder if you let him go this time. Such a person has to be severely punished. Call the police. This matter must be settled through the law. James watched the scene unfold in front of him with dissatisfaction on his face. Although he was unfamiliar with the entertainment industry, he knew that they often created hype through the media. He immediately recognized that this incident was carefully planned out by Kian. The purpose was to raise hype about him and the transgenerational group. The media strongly insisted on getting the police involved and for James to be arrested. Kian continued to act very generously and kept saying he would not pursue the case. Helen immediately scolded James. What are you still standing there for? Come and thank Kian. You'd have to spend the rest of your life in prison if you offended someone else today. Thank you, Kian, for forgiving me, James went over and said. All right, it's no big deal. Don't report nonsense in the media. Helen waved her hand and said to the media reporters. All of you disperse now. Thanks for caring for Kian. Helen greeted everyone warmly and dispersed the supporting crowd. However, no one paid any attention to James. He touched his nose and smiled faintly. Turning around, he took the elevator again to the top floor. Scarlett was startled and asked, What brings you back again, James? Who's in charge of transgenerational entertainment? Asked James. It's a guy recruited from another entertainment company. He knows a lot of people in the industry and brought more than 20 popular celebrities with him to our company, Scarlett explained. What's his name? Harvey Shaw. Call him to see me right away. Understood. I'll arrange it right away. Scarlett immediately made a phone call, call Harvey, the manager of the entertainment department, to come to the chairman's office. Harvey had a certain status in the entertainment industry. He was the president of an entertainment company and was recruited for a lot of money to join the transgenerational group. Plenty of celebrities came with him and stabilized transgenerational entertainment. He had just signed a contract with Kian just a few moments ago. There was a call from the higher-ups to go to the chairman's office. Could it be that the chairman recently found out I've signed plenty of celebrities to the company and want to reward me? Harvey was extremely excited as he thought about the possibility. He immediately headed straight to the top floor. It had been a while since he joined the transgenerational group, but he had never been to the top floor. The top floor was a restricted area, and they could not visit without permission. Even he was not allowed to come to the chairman's office despite being the general manager of transgenerational entertainment. He entered the office. Harvey was shocked that the office was more than 1,000 square meters. MMs. Brooks. He greeted Scarlett respectfully when he saw her. The boss wants to see you. Huh. Harvey was slightly taken aback by her words. Boss. Isn't Scarlett the chairman of the transgenerational group? Is there another boss behind her? He raised his head and saw James sitting in an office chair. This man in ordinary clothes is the boss behind the scenes of the transgenerational group. He was in disbelief. However, there were only two people in the office. Harvey walked over respectfully and asked, Boss, did you ask to see me? Ads by Pub Future. James crossed his legs and said indifferently, Did you sign on, Kian? Yes. Harvey nodded. He was confident that the upper-ups would reward him for it. It was the result he expected. Kian was currently the most popular celebrity with hundreds of millions of followers. He was incredibly proud to have signed Kian. Call him to come back. Okay. Harvey was unaware of James' intentions, so he immediately called Kian's manager, Helen. Helen, have you gone far? Could you come back to Transgenerational Tower immediately? Our chairman wants to see Kian. Yes, the chairman that bought the entire transgenerational new city. Come back quickly. Harvey stood aside after making the call. Scarlett did not leave and also stood aside. James took out a cigarette and lit it. Time passed minute by minute. About half an hour later, Kian walked into the office with his manager, Helen. Helen and Kian were shocked when they stepped into the luxurious and extravagant office of 1,000 square meters. Mr. Shaw. Oh, and MMs. Brooks. Kian immediately exclaimed when he saw Scarlett. Ms. Brooks, I've heard a lot about you. I never expected to be fortunate enough to meet you today. I'm the one who wants to see you. Kian raised his head and turned around when he heard another person's voice. A man sat in an office chair by the glass window. Kian was dumbfounded to see the man. Go to him, said Scarlett. Helen and Kian were shocked. The two approached James. This is the real boss of the transgenerational group, Mr. Caden. What? Kian exclaimed. James glanced at him playfully. Kian, right, hello, we meet again. Helen's mind was buzzing. After a few seconds, she immediately fell to her knees. Harvey was confused by her sudden behavior. Scarlett was the only one in the room who understood that Kian must have provoked James. Kian, it was a good plan. You used the transgenerational group to create hype and displayed your generosity in front of the media. James chuckled lightly. Quote. Kian opened his mouth but could not utter a word. James said coldly, Harvey, terminate the contract with Kian and spread the order to completely blacklist him. Any company that dares to sign him is an enemy of the transgenerational group. Also, be more careful with who you sign on in the future. Don't just sign on those famous celebrities. Instead, train up new celebrities and give them more chances. Understood. Harvey immediately nodded and did not dare to say another word. Meanwhile, Kian returned to his senses and stepped back while trembling. He would have fallen to the floor if not for Helen, who quickly got up to support him. Blacklist. Kian was completely shocked. What exactly was going on? How could someone with such an unremarkable appearance dressed in ordinary clothes be the real boss of the transgenerational group? Kian could not believe it. MMs. Brooks, this must be a joke, right? Get lost. Harvey pointed to the door and chased him out. He was a sensible person to have climbed so high. He immediately understood that Kian had offended the behind-the-scene boss, which resulted in him being blacklisted. You've been fired, Kian. No entertainment company in the country will dare to hire you anymore. You won't be able to act in movies, and no major entertainment programs will invite you. Now, get out of this place immediately. Mr. Shaw, I've just signed the contract. Kian glanced at Harvey and said. James no longer bothered with them and stood up to leave. Initially, he wanted to come back for an autograph to make Thea happy. Ads by Pub Future. After seeing it happen through the surveillance camera, he was already dissatisfied with Kian's littering behavior. However, he turned a blind eye to it since he was also a lazy person and did not expect others to act otherwise. Just as he was about to leave, Kian happened to use him to hype up his popularity. At this moment, Kian deeply recognized his mistake. He hurriedly chased after James and shouted, "Boss. I made a mistake, boss. Please give me one more chance. I promise I'll work hard. I'm the most sought-after celebrity right now and have over 100 millions of fans." James turned around and glanced at Kian, who was pleading while chasing after him. "Don't you understand what I just said? Do you need me to get security to chase you out?" he said coldly. Kian's face darkened after hearing his reply, and he threatened, "I've got hundreds of millions of fans throughout the country. Do you know what the consequences are if you cancel my contract and blacklist me? Believe it or not, Transgenerational Tower will be surrounded by my fans with just one Twitter post from me. Go ahead and try." James glanced at him with a smile. Afterward, he turned and left. "Scarlett, get the security guards to kick them out," James ordered as he walked away. Scarlett did not dare to disobey his order and immediately called for the security guards. A security guard arrived soon and chased Kian out of the building. Meanwhile, James took a taxi back home. A restaurant in Kensington. Quincy had successfully got the job as the Transgenerational Group's vice president and was extremely thrilled. She immediately called Thea and asked Thea out for dinner. "Thea, do you know what happened? I went to the Transgenerational Group to apply for a manager job, but Brooks hired me as the vice president instead. I finally got the stage to put use to my skills." "What? The vice president of the Transgenerational Group?" Thea was surprised. Her face immediately lit up with a smile as she said, "Congratulations, Quincy. By the way, Pacific Group also has plans to enter Transgenerational New City. Since you're the vice president, don't forget to help me out a bit when the time comes." Quincy's face darkened after hearing this. "Thea, although I'm the vice president of the Transgenerational Group and have great power in the organization, using power for personal gain is a professional taboo. I'll help out if the Pacific Group meets the requirements. However, it does not even come close. Wouldn't it be a crime for me to help you?" Thea stuck out her tongue mischievously. "I'll do my best to make the Pacific Group meet the qualifications in the shortest possible time. However, you better give me a few tips when the time comes." "That's more like it," Quincy laughed and replied. They had their meal in a private room. Inside the private room was an LCD television. The news was playing on the television while they had their meal. "Good afternoon, audiences. Welcome to Transgenerational News Channel. Celebrity Kian was spotted in Transgenerational Tower at noon." Thea's eyes lit up while eating, and she immediately raised her eyes to watch the television after hearing the announcement on the news. "Wow, it really is Kian. What? Do you like Kian too?" asked Quincy. "Oh, yeah, I've liked him for a long time. I like all his songs, movies, and television series. We've received information that Kian has signed a contract with the Transgenerational Group today. However, just today, he was attacked by a man and injured Kian's bodyguards. What in the world happened? Let's take a look at the footage." The image of James surrounded by dozens of security guards appeared on the television screen.